one thing that really hit me early on, well, after I'd been playing for a little while, I guess, but that I was really taken with is what I like to call this sort of like wiggle worm sounding stuff where, and it's really pretty simple. You just get basically in a pentatonic box. If we're in the key of A, right? And I guess where this came from, and once again, I don't think I ever really copied anything specific, but I would hear these guys do this. There was a band from Atlanta in the 70s, and it was a little before my time, but called Mother's Finest, and they had a guitar player named Moses Moe that had a club band after that, and when I was in college, I would go and see him play, and he was really good at this kind of thing, and I always thought it really knocked me out, you know, so I decided I really want to try to learn how to do that. Let me see, I got it written down over here. There was a song on the first Montrose record. He did a version of Good Rockin' Tonight, and I think it was in the key of C, and I never learned that either, but I heard it. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I need to figure out something like that. And there's a Brian May thing on a song called Brighton Rock that I figured out. I think it goes some... Right, so he's just... That's kind of... one way of doing it. And well, Joe Perry, once again, and Walk This Way, what is he? This is something like, once again, I never learned it, but. You know, some kind of thing like that, but it's just working through that pentatonic box, but with some other notes added. But I always liked the way that it sounded because it would always sound really snotty to me, and like it was kind of sexy sounding and funky. Really, is the way that I think describes it the best, is that it was funky sounding. So if you take it, and I never really wanted it to sound pedestrian, you know, like you hear. I was never attracted to that really so much for some reason. I don't know why, but not that it's not legitimate, but. I would, so let's look at that, like if we were talking about doing it strictly in a pentatonic way, and I don't know, have no idea what I'm going to play, but I'm going to play something that's going to be an example of that with just the notes of this minor scale, and it would be, you know, if you're thinking it like as far as something funky goes, you know, my definition of it anyway, you know, you right, that's all just straight pentatonic. So now, the keynote for me, the thing that really flipped me out when I heard it at first, is this flat 5, which is right here. Which, you know, is a very blue note, and on its own is a little dark shadow sounding, right? But but if you throw that in there, right? So you got all that. You could just go on and wear yourself and the listener out for days in there, but right, so that's with the flat 5. So you see what I'm getting at here? You know what I mean? It's not just like square sounding. It's a little different. So then, if you take your modal notes, which is your 2 and your 6, that's convenient, isn't it? 3 notes per string, all right there, right? So then you can really whiz around a little bit. You know, if you use those. Right? See, so that's just, and I cheated, and I did play a major 3rd right there. Just because you got 4 notes. Right? So it's kind of like if you have a, you know, So it's a different way of looking at that rather than, rather once again, that kind of thing. So you could syncopate them, and I don't really think about it that much, because I've worked on it through the years. But that's kind of something that I think is a bit of a cornerstone of what I like to, think about as far as my style, quote unquote, on guitar. I think that's something that I do that is a bit of me, and it was because I was drawn to it as a kid. I really just loved it. I don't know why it struck a chord with me, that kind of sound, but it really, really did. Much more so than a lot of things that are a lot fancier or more harmonically advanced or whatnot. I just really love the street sound, the street nature of it. Well, I'll show you one thing real quick as far as that goes, and then we'll see if there's any other questions. You can play your major third up here too, right? So actually, if you want to really get wacky, you can play all those notes, right? I don't really play 4 notes a string because my technique does not allow for that. But I do a lot of 3-note per string stuff. And one thing that you can do is throw that major third in there. And there's a song on our first Cry of Love record called Too Cold in the Winter, and there's the solo from that has a lick that opens up. It's in key of E. It's in E, and it opens up, and it's slow. It goes. Right, so I'm not even picking that. And so that's just wiggling around in that scale, right? So if you play it up to... it's kind of stupid, really. There's just like a few notes, but you just... I don't know, it just came out. And that actually happened at a rehearsal. We were playing the song one time, and... we used to tape everything on a jam box back in the prehistoric cassette days, and I just played that off the top of my head and ended up keeping it. I liked it, ended up keeping it. So that's one thing that I really enjoy doing, and if that makes any sense, is playing that stuff. You'll notice I left out this 9 in the key of A and this 6 right here because it starts to get a little modal sounding for my taste if you're not trying to impart that sound. In other words, it gets a little sophisticated sounding if you... You hear that? It's not, even though you're playing them in the upper octave, it doesn't sound that way. As soon as you go down there, you're in Santana land, right? So which is great. I'm just saying for that kind of sound, I want it to sound like, it needs to sound like a pimp, that kind of thing. There I go with my conceptual stuff. But so I'll show you another thing that you can do here too, along those same lines that I also use that maybe you can take with you. You can move all that stuff down and play it all in a major scale too, because there's 3 notes per string there. Also, so here's a major pentatonic. So here's our A. Right, so there's your A major. So if you're wanting to spice that up a little bit, you're playing what's called a Mixolydian scale, which is a fancy word for play a G note along with your rest of your scale. Right, because you got your 4 right here, which is... Right, and then here's your G. So if you want that kind of sound as a major, you can throw in this minor third right here. So only thing's different now is the interval is different. In other words, you're not got half step, whole step, half step, whole step. Here you got whole step, half step. But then you got that minor third. But you can play those same kind of licks. Right? Same muscle memory type.